Hello and welcome to the Wachusett Area Chamber of Commerce Business Showcase. I'm Jen Stanovich and I'll be your host as we learn more about the many businesses in the Wachusett area. When attorneys are faced with complex medical legal cases, they often turn to experts for guidance. Enter the legal nurse consultant, who uses health science knowledge and clinical expertise to navigate these challenges. Today we're joined by Currie, the founder of Currie Legal Nurse Consulting. She's here to tell us more. Welcome, Karen.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in. It's nice to see you. So before we get into the legal aspect of all this, let's talk about your background in the medical field.
Sure. Yeah. So I started in healthcare in 2004 as a mental health counselor. And then I graduated from nursing school in 2007, worked in medical surge, transplant. And then I went into the medical ICU, worked in the critical care float pool at the level 1 trauma center. So all of the ICUs there I've worked in. And then after that, I did a little primary care at the time. And then I got my bachelor's degree in 2016, worked in the recovery room and peri-op services for a few years. And then COVID happened, started surging into the COVID ICUs again, and then stayed in one of those COVID ICUs for a little while before moving on to infusion.
Okay, so you have an extensive medical background to be able to bring that experience to bear. So what caused you to make the switch then from personal care into legal services?
So I love physiology. I love to teach. I love to boil really complex concepts down into sort of digestible information for people. So that worked really well for my patients and their families. And now it translates very nicely when I work with attorneys on their cases.
Well, but I have to think you're going through reams of documents.
Lots.
Is that right?
Yep. Tens of thousands of pages.
And your goal is to boil it down so that they can understand and you can help their case.
Yeah, and to pick out a lot of the nuance. So much of the data in a medical record may look normal, but is really significant. And likewise, data may be abnormal technically, but doesn't really matter to a case. So I can help pull that out for attorneys and sort of tell them what is really important and relevant to their specific theory.
So in terms of the services that you offer, you're giving them reports?
Yep. So I can do verbal reports or written reports, chronologies, medical summaries, merit screenings, those sorts of things. I do research as well for standard of care. I help them really nail down their causation component of their negligence cases.
And in terms of the attorneys that you work with, they really run the spectrum, right?
Sure. Yeah. So a lot of personal injury and malpractice, but also there's mass tort, family law, immigration law, anybody who's doing anything with medical information that they need just eyes on.
Right. Well, I'd like you to give us an example because I think what you do is really interesting. So whether it's a case you worked on or not, is there one that you think can show us what you do?
Oh, there's all sorts of them. One, I know we were talking about sort of the CSI and forensics part of it. There was a woman who was walking home at night in the dark, and there was a retaining wall that was 10 feet high, not fenced. So she said that she walked right off it. She didn't see it. She fell. She was injured. She had to lay there until morning until people came in for work and found her there. And really when the medical aspect of the legal team looked at her injuries, they were able to graph them in a visual way so that the attorneys could bring this to trial and say all of her injuries were on the bottoms of her feet. Whereas if she fell off of a retaining wall, she would have had injuries on her hands and face and those sorts of things. So that she jumped off of the retaining wall that she did in fact see and landed and broke the bottoms of her feet was able to be displayed visually in a graphic way because they were able to pinpoint those injuries.
So they must use technology for that, combined with your reports to bring it all together?
Right, yep. So they'll have engineers come in with programs like Matimo to sort of correlate the injuries to the case.
Right. Think how critical that is.
It's fun.
Right?
Yeah. And it's important too, because sometimes you can say, well, this would maybe make logical sense, but you still have to have it admissible as evidence.
Sure.
Right.
And more than doing reports, you've actually been asked to testify.
Sure. Yep. I have testified. I've opined on the standard of care. As I get further away from my bedside experience, that ability is expiring, but I can still testify as an expert for summary witness and fact witnessing. So I can summarize voluminous records for a bench or jury.
Sure. And I mean, to be in front of a jury, I have to think that your experience as a medical professional and being able to keep it together also comes into play when you're on the stand.
Yeah. I call it code mode.
Code mode.
Code mode.
Sure.
Just stay calm under really, really hard situations. I'm good at that.
Yeah. Well, and you seem to really enjoy it too.
I do.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It's terrific. So, okay, you work with the gamut of attorneys, bring services to bear in terms of reports or testifying. Talk about, you said even immigration attorneys, which is interesting. How did that come into play?
Right. So there are situations sometimes where there may be a caregiver who's providing care for someone with really complex medical needs, and that caregiver may be being deported. So the immigration attorneys would need someone to summarize and maybe even testify about what kind of care that person is providing to someone.
Right. And how would these attorneys get in touch with you? What's the best way for them to reach out?
So email is really great. I check my email all the time. And so that's Karen at KarenWithAY.com. So it's KARYN at KarenWithAWHY.com. And I also have a website that you can use the contact form through, but take a look at what I do there. And that's KarenWithAY.com as well. And my phone number is 508-210-0011.
Well, I thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I just think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps up this edition of the Wachusett Area Chamber of Commerce Business Showcase. I'd like to thank Karen Currie of Currie Legal Nurse Consulting for joining us. I hope to see you next time as we learn more about local businesses in the Wachusett area. I'm Jen Stanovich. Thank you.